think,
Yeah, you know, I think so.
I said, send it to Weather Channel. Those are good.
Good afternoon, all. Welcome to our policy meeting. Glad we have everybody here. We have two, I'm going to point out two superstars we have with us today. Miss May, thank you for being here from Castle Hayne Elementary School, and our principal of the year, Mr. Hall from Winter Park. So thank you guys for being here and giving us your input. Mr. Hall, well, the three of us have been together for 2 days now. So tomorrow, hopefully we'll see you again. But we have turnaround task force. Hopefully somebody's going to be there with me. But very good. I do have a policy adjustment I need to make, so I don't see Ms. Justice here quite yet, but I will be bringing that up just to let everybody know during the after the pledge. At this point, Ms. Gadetsky, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Pete Wildeboer,
Present?
Mr. David Perry,
Present.
Ms. Judy Justice,
All right. Very good. At this point, we will have our invocation. Welcome. Hey.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is In Siu Gang. I'm currently serving Ricefield United Methodist Church as an associate pastor. It is my great privilege to get to lead us in prayer today. Let us go before God in prayer. Holy and loving God, thank you for giving us this new day, and we give thanks for this gathering and for the opportunity to serve our community through leadership and decision making. As this committee meets to shape policies that impact students, educators, and families, we ask for your wisdom and a spirit of collaboration. May the conversations held here be guided by fairness and a shared commitment to the well-being of all students. Grant patience in listening, insight in deliberation, and a deep sense of responsibility in every decision made. Bless the educators who dedicated themselves to teaching, the families who entrusted their children to this school system, and the students who are growing and learning each day. May this work contribute to an environment where all can thrive. We ask for your peace, your wisdom, and your strength to continue to the good work. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you very much. Actually, Ms. Justice's turn to pledge. In her absence, I will go ahead and lead that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And thank you very much. Thank you for being here today. We will carry on. Again, the adjustment I do need to make, this is from the fall. It was brought to my attention today that we have two policies with the exact same number, relating to two different things. One of them was just passed on February 4th. We have 5150, which is reporting to external agencies, and also 5150, relationship with colleges and universities. The NCSBA has proposed us changing reporting to external agencies to 5160. I'll make that motion.
Aye.
Aye, okay. First and second, any further discussion? If not, all in favor of changing the reporting to external agencies policy to 5160, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That carries 2-0. Carries 2-0. All right, carrying on. Hello, Ms. Justice, how are you? I stole your thunder. I pledged, so you will pledge next month. Okay. Okay. At this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda.
Amend the agenda? Yes, sir?
To add discussion of policy 3620.
3620. I'll second that. Any discussion? Okay, we'll put that down as E, 3620. Let's vote on it first before I put it down. All in favor of adding policy 3620 to our discussion? And I believe we do have that paperwork in front of us, extracurricular activities. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, like sign. That carries 3-0. So again, we'll add 3620 to E. Again, now I will entertain a motion to approve the amended agenda.
So motioned.
I will second that. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, we'll carry on with that. Approval of the minutes. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That again carries 3-0. We are on fire today, guys. I like this. Keep it going. Let us start with policy 2010, board and superintendent relations. Going to lead this discussion, is that correct?
If that's all right.
I would love for that, sir.
So we have done so much work over the past 6 months, sort of talking about what board governance is and what school operations is, and I'm on page 17. Yeah, no kidding, right? Because it took me a long time to get to it. And so what I wanted to bring to the policy committee and then back to the full board was sort of a information for you guys to help us decide or kind of solidify what those roles are. So this is something we developed a few months ago, but I wanted to bring it to you guys for discussion and sort of review before I brought it to the full board. And since it's tied so tightly to this policy seemed like the best place to bring it. Just to help me kind of in my new role sort of grow into where the lines drawn to make sure that I'm making sure that I'm staying on my side of it and to help you guys determine what the appropriate behavior of a board is versus a superintendent and help us all work together better. So I just wanted to bring it here and let you guys get a look at it and see whether or not you could see anything that you wanted me to look at or change or adapt to it.
Ms. Justice, do you have any recommendations for this? I'll start with, it's always nice to start with the young lady we have with us.
Well, this is pretty much things we've gone over. I'm blessed or whatever for having been on the board before and have gone through this policy and other times. I mean, we have pretty much worked it to where it is today. I guess that what I'm saying is if you're bringing changes or thoughts to it, please do.
No, not changes, actually. I'm just hoping to solidify what's going on so well right now.
Okay, well, it's been, yeah.
Because it really feels like it's been a very collaborative sort
Yes,
of
it
back and
has.
forth, and so I wanted to make sure we solidified it in a way that, quite frankly, I've shared this with other superintendents because they've been like, how do you, your board is working so well together, how do you guys work so well together? So I was sort of putting this together and sending it to other folks, so I thought it would be something you guys wanted to see as well.
Okay. I just have one question. I generally like this a lot. Just about the strategic plan. I've asked a bunch of people, and nobody could really tell me what the process was for us to update the strategic plan, so.
And that's a really good point, because I had,
Updated?
yeah. Because right now, our strategic plan generally runs for a 5-year cycle, and this one, I think, is till 2027.
Yes.
Team, is that correct? And so normally, every year, we bring you an update to it, and I haven't done that as of yet. But I think it's really the time now to talk about, do we want to change anything in our strategic plan for next year, add something to it? So I think that's a good part of that question, is where does that live? And how often do you guys sort of refresh it and look at it again?
And does that go through policy? Does it go, how does
Right.
the mechanics of it work?
Right, right. And I think every school system sort of does it their own way. It's sort of like when I was a principal, the school improvement plan, this is our school improvement plan, right? It's the district guide for that. I certainly can. Now, what we were doing for a while was bringing one strategic goal every couple of months to the board to kind of review. I've been trying to cram a lot of that stuff into my superintendent comments. I think it's a good question for the board, is how do we want to, is that something we want to look at during our retreat? Is that something we want to start to talk about, a pulse check on where we are on those goals? I think those are all good things.
I think, my thought on that would be, the retreat is good. I don't want to put too much on the retreat, so, it gets watered down where you have 15 minutes to talk about something as important as strategic plan. You did steal my thunder, though, because I was going to mention that it was just like, it is a living, breathing document, and it needs to be. It needs to be changed as, throughout the 5 years we have. And, and if the board as a whole feels like we need to go this way or do that, or tweak this or whatever else, I think that is, that you don't want to put something, as I did when I started as a principal a long time ago. We had the strategic, the school improvement plan, and we did it, and we really worked hard on it, brought everybody together, and then put it on the shelf, and next year you pulled it out.
brought it back down and
And
pulled it out again.
it needs to be a living, working document that we can continue to.
Well, the
talk
board
about.
has refreshed twice since that was put into place, and the superintendent has changed as well. The chief academic officer has changed, the HR person has changed.
Oh, my goodness.
So it's,
All kinds of.
And I would ask
We
our
have
our
3
two
new board
principals,
members.
and if we could ask our two principals, because I saw you looked like you wanted to say something, so, okay, I'm sorry. Did you guys have any inputs, on the strategic plan? At all? Okay, all right, sorry, okay. I thought I had that look.
Were you on the board when we did this? Okay, so you know how much work went into it.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a community and district-driven plan. It wasn't just one stakeholder, it was everybody. So we started off with a really good basis if we do want to look at changes.
Sure.
and I try to weave it into some things, like every time we've done one of these superintendent budget priority meetings, we've brought that down off the wall and specifically said, where does this goal fit into this? When we look at our department budgets next week, that's going to be what we're using as our guiding focus as well, is like, where does this fit into these plans? So certainly, if that's what we decide to do, I can certainly tee up like a State of the Union for the strategic plan for the budget retreat, the board retreat, if that's
It's
what
a
you
good
guys would like.
idea.
I'm going to write that down so I don't forget it. And all of you are writing that down as well.
I've got it down
Good
for
call.
you.
Is there any other discussion about policy, where am I? Policy 2010?
If you guys are comfortable with me bringing it to the full board and sort of, we can put it as an addendum to the policy, or it's just going to help me make sure that I'm running the district in the way that we're still staying as collaborative as we are.
Maybe, not necessarily addendum, but maybe more of a, how we, what is it called? With the
Like a procedure?
procedures, procedures underneath it. Mr.
So
Perry?
you're not really asking for any amendments to this policy, so
Not really, I just wanted you guys to see it before I brought it to the full board.
It's a good idea.
So you guys could give me feedback or think about it before I brought it to everybody, and it just seemed like this was the right place to bring it.
what you really is for like a reaffirmation or something?
I guess so, or more of like a, let's put some solidifying the lanes together.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, next we have policy 2610, which is on page
Sorry, 20.
page 20. All right, and main points here to discuss the duties and responsibilities of the board attorney, specifically with regard to when they are contacted by a board member, to propose an amendment to the policy that states that every board member must be informed of the question and response within 24 hours prior to the board committee meeting, whichever comes first or. I think, Ms. Justice,
Well, I
you were the
actually
one who brought it
made,
forward.
I just added that sentence to the original one. If I want, you two want to, I can pass it out to anybody.
If you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, would you like to pass this over that way to Mr. Perry?
Mr. Perry.
And basically,
Good stretch.
stretch those arms out. The sentence that someone asked to be put in there was every board, do you want to read the whole thing? We don't have to read the whole thing, but the sentence that they wanted to add to it was that every board member must be informed of the question and response within 24 hours or prior to any board or committee meeting, whichever comes first. And this is referring to a question by a board member to our legal services, separate from from the chairman's discussion. We have, yeah, go ahead. You have a...
So what happens if there wasn't a response, or if the response was, I got to look into it?
Well, then that's what they need to convey. That's a communication. That's the whole point.
So then, again, when they actually respond, after you do your research and you get back to them, then you say it again, well, yeah, this is what I figured out, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
The whole point is a response. The response saying, I've got to look into it, that's a response. Yeah.
I'm going to ask our attorney, what your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's the board's call on this. I'll tell you, one thing that you may want to keep in mind is that if I start doing this and it comes to, or any board attorney starts doing this and it comes to routine policy matters that people are being asked about, for example, tobacco policy change, and that's not the greatest example of it in the world, but the response on something like that would be a public record. It would be something that would be subject to the Public Records Act. It's a little bit different from the ordinary type of attorney-client privilege legal advice you give that would deal with, say, a litigation matter. I'm trying to think of an easy way to do this so that we don't feel like that we're working in the post office and trying to meet every policy in the world by responding to everything like that. I don't know if there's a particular form is not, an email list, for example, might be the best way to do it. I prefer not to put things in writing like that very often for that very reason, that it becomes subject to a public records request. And sometimes people don't want that. But that's a decision for you guys as board members to make. We can live with it either way. I mean, it's what you want to do.
So to clarify, if this passes, what you're saying, this would be subject to the records request, because you're conveying it to all 7 members of the board.
Yes, ma'am. Some of the things. Now, for example, if you were to pick up the phone and ask me, hey, where does, we have a slip and fall at one of the schools, where does the lawsuit on that stand, or where does the disciplinary action for so-and-so, or this hearing that we've got coming up for a student reassignment, things like that. Obviously, those would not be public records because there are other reasons that they're exempted from the public records laws. But just general policy questions would be. Now, they are already, but all of the questions and answers that we give typically don't come up because many of them are verbal. I'll give you an example. Somebody asked me last month about the change in emergency board meetings and remote attendance, whether you could vote or not at one of them. And that's the typical kind of question we get. Sometimes I'll say, hold on, let me take a look, and I'll call you back in a few minutes about it to go take a look. Or sometimes you can answer it right off the top of your head. But that's the typical kind of response. It's nothing shocking or anything like that. Now, we do sometimes get ones that deal with personnel matters, to, or, because we're going through some of a change with the superintendent hunt and all those, there were a whole lot of questions and answers that we probably would not have wanted to be reduced to writing for, everyone to see, because that kind of defeats the purpose of it.
But that's personnel matter anyway, so that wouldn't be,
Personnel, I
that
mean,
wouldn't be
that's not
subject
the
to
greatest
open
example
meeting
of it.
laws.
Right, that would not have been, it would have been exempt for another reason. I mean, it's like I said, it's your choice now. I'll tell you the typical drill we have, and I think I've repeated this. I don't know if I know earlier on I'd said it. My view of it is we don't keep secrets from people about what we get called about. If someone else calls and asks, hey, did so-and-so talk to you, or ask you about X, Y, and Z, I don't mind telling them. Now, if it's a personal gripe about someone else, another board member, well, so-and-so was a jerk at the last meeting, obviously we're not going to repeat that. But the policy type questions, the board business questions, yeah, we do. And there's some board members who call more than others. But I will tell you that it has dramatically decreased since August, September maybe. And I think part of that is because of the relative calm we've had in the superintendent changeover and all that. That was a pretty chaotic time. But yeah, we get dramatically less calls now, at least I do. The ones that I get are primarily Dr. Barnes, which wouldn't be covered by this policy because that's not a board member. But most of my communications now probably are with the chair.
I think it's important for us to know that there be some kind of knowledge base of, the attorneys work for all of us and not just the chair. And so in addition to the change that we're talking about here about responses, I wanted to also add it, in addition to get rid of everything from, on the third paragraph, from the chairperson of the board normally will decide for board members when to seek legal advice, etc. I think we should all have a right to contact, all of us board members should have a right to contact our attorneys. But I do believe in transparency, so I think there should be some kind of a, if not a email, there may be some kind of a documentation. If you have a verbal communication with them, I mean, a 1 or 2 sentence summary is good enough. I mean, unless somebody asks for more. I mean, I don't want you to have to spend an hour writing down a complete summary of what you told somebody over the phone. But some idea.
That is a concern. I will tell you that is a concern. It eats up time, and time is money on it. Just as a practical, as an administrative way of handling that, it would almost be easier. I would almost suggest that you designate 2 people, 2 other people that you want us to call to tell. I mean, and I don't care who they are. It's just that way you realize, you're guaranteeing, one, that other, and standing designations are fine. But, my assumption is there's a concern about some people aren't finding out, or some people maybe aren't being told, and frequently I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings by saying this, that's because they don't ask, but that's one way to deal with that without creating this monster of having to sit down and type things up all the time whenever I get a quick phone call about something. But that's just my take on it. It's.
I want to go back to Mr. Perry, because you had said something in there, and then, are you making?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion to add Ms. Justice's changes, to add taking out everything from the chairperson of the board normally in the 3rd paragraph all the way to consult individually with the attorney, period.
That sentence? Two sentences, three sentences.
So you're saying, just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, the chairperson of the board normally will decide for board members when to seek legal advice or assistance on school matters. If an individual member of the board desires to consult directly with the attorney, the board member must notify the chairperson of the legal information that is sought. If legal assistance is necessary and has not been sought previously for the matter, the board member will be directed to consult individually with the attorney. Correct?
Yep,
That
like that.
whole section. All right, is there a second on that? Let's go to that one.
Well, do a second so we can have a discussion.
Okay, we have a second, first and second. All right, why don't we discuss that part first, and then we'll come back to the
Okay.
original.
All right.
We'd like to discuss that section.
Do I get first?
Go ahead, yes, sir, go ahead.
I just believe that this is, the board attorneys work for all of us. I think from what I was understanding by talking to Ms. Justice, this is something that was put in the previous board. I don't think there should be gatekeepers for our attorneys. We're all equally elected and members, and we should be able to consult with our board attorneys without getting permission first. So that's where I'm coming from on this. As far as, but I do believe in transparency afterwards. That's my rationale for wanting this language struck.
And I'm going to, and I'll go next if you don't mind, but I would say the only concern I have with this is the fact that we end up, we sit there and at times say, well, the attorney costs us too much, and actually our new attorneys don't cost us too much. But, they cost us way too much, and I mean, honestly, every time you pick up the phone and say, hey, Mr. Blanchard, I have a concern, or, then it becomes, the clock starts. So it's kind of that's something we have to keep in the back of our minds that, we pay a lot of money for our attorneys, and myself, these are very knowledgeable folks. But, it will, the money's got to come from somewhere.
Well, and I'll tell you, attorneys are an overhead expense, like the light bill or the water bill, and it's your job to minimize it. I'm happy when people, I don't mind, I don't want to use the word happy because sometimes I groan when I get phone calls, but I don't want anybody to be discouraged from calling, but at the same time, there is you as a board do kind of need to control how much, because, it is a product that people are using.
Is Justice your thoughts on that section only?
Okay, well, I was here when they put that section in about the chairperson controlling it, the gatekeeping role, and that was a gatekeeping role intentionally. You could do the compromise, notify the chair, and then they can just, and what your concern is, and then they can, and you should have the open communication with the chair, and then they could disseminate whether or not this question has been asked before, but the chair doesn't have the ability to say, no, you can't call them or whatever. I mean, that would sort of be a compromise, because the chair should know what's been going on and say, well, somebody already asked and this is what happened, so they don't have to make the call. I think that's a real practical part of that section. But whereas the gatekeeping section was put in there intentionally, and I remember all that was going on at the time, and it was it just added more dysfunction at the time, more dysfunction on the board. Sadly, that was it was under the previous administration.
From our perspective, it would, if we are reporting about every, the inquiries we get, it would make it easier to designate, hey, you need to call the chair every time you get an inquiry from someone other than the chair, and let them notify everyone else. That makes it easy. That's one phone call I got to make. It's like that. Or I may be talking to them later in the day. That way, I think I talked to Ms. Mason earlier today very briefly, but it might be 2 or 3 days, 3 or 4 days, sometimes a week between when we speak. So.
I think there is a legitimate concern here that somebody could overuse the attorney, or, but I think that's fairly, I'm assuming records are kept when you talk to me or anybody else, and those show up somewhere in the bill, or maybe a report that we get. And if one board member is monopolizing your time or spending all kinds of sorts of time, that might be time for the chair to investigate and put limitations or curb, or have a little chit chat with a board member, like, hey, you're costing us a lot of money. But I don't think, that could be something after the fact. I don't think you need to, if you see the abuse, then deal with the abuse. If you're using way too many hours, then the chair can deal with that problem after the fact and try to curb it. I don't think we need this whole check-in with the chairperson thing before you're allowed to talk. If there's a problem, they can deal with it later if they're using it too much. That's my two cents.
Is there any sort of situation about the fact that you're the attorney for the board, not for individual board members? Is that a thing at all? Because I think we need to remember that as individuals, you don't have really any of the authority you have as a board.
And that is certainly true. I'm going to try to stress this to people, even though we're called the board attorney, technically my client is the agency. Now, as a practical matter, that means my client is the board, but my client is really the agency, not the board. So if all of you guys collectively, say, decided that you were going to take $1 million and go to Las Vegas, I would have to report to you because my client is the agency, not the board. And I use that strange example just because that's, that illustrates who my client is. So you're right. I am answering to board members, but my duty does not run to a board member or even collectively the board. It's the agency. And I suspect I probably harp on that too much, that your duties as board members run to the agency and the agency only. So not students, not teachers, not voters, the agency. And that's what you took the oath for, and I'm kind of in the same boat with you. I serve the agency, I just report to you.
Well, at this point, let's go ahead and vote on the amendment that Mr. Perry brought up, and we'll vote on the amendment that Mr. Justice brought up. So, all in favor of leaving the word, or adding the words, deleting the words, that's the word, from the chairperson all the way to the attorney. Would you please call the roll, Kudinski?
Judy Justice.
Say that one more time.
Okay, let me read the whole thing so we're totally clear. All we're voting on now is whether to delete the words, the chairperson of the board normally will decide for board members when to seek legal advice or assistance on school matters. If an individual member of the board desires to consult directly with the attorney, the board member must notify the chairperson of the legal information to be sought. If it is determined that the legal assistance is necessary and has not been sought previously on this matter, the board member will be directed to consult individually with the attorney. So we're just talking about that, deleting that section right now.
Judy Justice.
Delete it.
So you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Pete Wildebohr.
Yes?
David Perry.
Yes.
Okay, so that passes 3-0. All right, and then the second section, this is every board member must be informed of the question and response within 24 hours or prior to any board or committee meeting, whichever comes first.
Are we still on discussion on this?
Yes.
What's the question from Mr. Blanchard? If that were to say 48 hours or prior to a board committee meeting, whichever is first, would that help you?
Yeah, but also it would be, yes, sir. Again, the easiest route would be to designate, every question that comes from someone other than the chair has to go back to the chair, or, I have to tell them and have them tell you. That makes it easy. That keeps me having one person to report to at any given time. Now, I realize that you have, individual board members have different concerns. They may think, well, if the chair doesn't tell me, that they get a phone call.
And I hate to say, let me play devil's advocate, say Last night at 10 o'clock, a board member called Mr. Blanchard and said, hey, we have a question about blah, 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 blah. Does that mean that you would get on the phone at 8 o'clock this morning and call all the board members? Because it says whichever comes first. So I'm concerned about that, whichever comes first. Because that would put them in a precarious position if Pete Wildebohr called, Mr. Blanchard last night about a question about policy committee, and I happened to get him at 8 o'clock last night. Now we're saying that, well, before today's meeting, he would have to stop everything else he's doing and contact us all, or contact Ms. Mason and have her contact us all. I mean, to me, that puts us in a, kind of puts us in a shoebox here. That's, which, like I say, prior to any board or committee meeting. So that means there have been many a time that we're going to put Mr. Blanchard or any of his colleagues in a shoebox that, they have to stop everything they're doing and get on the phone and call everybody. I think we need to have some flexibility in there. Mr. Perry?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think I think the idea behind the before the meeting thing is just so somebody doesn't get sandbagged, okay? So, and this can happen, and so, all of a sudden, and then the person who's on the opposite side of being sandbagged doesn't know what the legal opinion that the other person just sought, and puts them at a competitive disadvantage when it comes to the actual meeting. So, I mean, I think just everybody wants it to be fair play here, so, that's my only concern, whether it's 48 hours or before the meeting, or you want to put some kind of reserve clause in there in case situations like you just mentioned, and that's fine, but, I mean, as long as we could do it expeditiously, because the language now just doesn't give a timeline whatsoever. Maybe, I would, speaking for myself again, not for anybody else, but maybe every board member must be informed of the question response within 24 hours and just leave it at that. That would take care of the situation, or 36 hours, whatever you want to say, but that would that way we would all be informed, but it may not be, within 8 hours or 12 hours if there's a board meeting coming up, in case somebody called them right before a board meeting, I hate to say it, say Ms. Mason called, Mr. Blanchard on the way to the, to a Board of Education meeting.
Happens all the time, by the way.
Yeah, and says, hey, I got a question about blah, 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 blah. We're putting our attorney in a situation where, like, he's got to, how would he fulfill this? And if we're putting something in writing that we're saying you have to do, there's no flexibility in here. So that's what one of my concerns with this. But, I mean, it's a situation, like I say, Ms. Mason calls him on the way over, hey, I got to go over some 3 or 4 important things with you. How is he going to do that? Yes, sir.
Is that something that you could, if you got the call, like, on the way to the meeting, is that something you could just disclose at the beginning of the meeting so that everybody knows?
And that happens from time to time, if you really want to know. I mean, I'll get a question and run over and tell the chair right before, hey, I got a call about blah, blah, blah. This is what I told them. One thing that may help in a short notice situation, I mean, if you want us to send an email out to just say, hey, we got a question from board member X about Y, come talk to me when I get there, then you know what we're talking about, and I don't have to put what the response was in writing every time, because a lot of times, there'll be a fairly lengthy response on something. Well, here's a factor, here's a factor, here's a factor. And I mean, that's like writing a book chapter to tell people what got said. I think the topic may be a bigger concern to address the legitimate concerns of board members. Hey, we want to know what's being discussed. I'm happy to say, here's, got a question about this topic. If you're interested, call me and find out. I'm pitching that out as a possible That's not really policy language, that's an interpretation.
Interpret-
One way to get that done, you know what I
That's-
mean?
Yeah, and a lot, life is about interpretation, I mean, truly. The whole reason for this was because it can be abused, we've discovered. Sadly, I hate to see people using these kinds of behaviors on our team, but this stuff does happen, and it has been since I came on another board in 2018. So this is just basically to try to waylay people's behavior in not doing this. And you know, there are ways around, and I totally see what you're saying, but he is offering an opportunity to do a workaround on what you're concerned about.
Well, I would, you know, I'm going to make a, so you made a motion, so you amended, so I can't, I would say, my suggestion, I'll say it that way, why don't we let Mr. Blanchard and I work together on, you know, seeing the best way we can go use this, the wording we have, deleting that section, and bring it back to our next policy meeting.
Okay.
It's not something that's got to be done, I don't think, today or tomorrow. And that way there, we can bring it to the whole board after that. I don't think there's a need to push on it.
Point of order.
Yes, sir?
So are you suggesting that we vote on, at this point, just deleting the section that I made the motion on and we agreed to? Or are we just saying, tabling the whole discussion?
I would say table the whole discussion, bring the whole, instead of bringing it to, my thought to answer your question, Mr. Perry, is, I mean, instead of bringing it to the whole board and then bringing it to the whole board the second month in a row with other changes, why don't we get it the way we want it as a policy committee, and then we can bring it to the whole board at one time, instead of having, you know, us have policy 2610 for our March meeting and then have it again for our April meeting. Why not, let's get it exactly right, we'll vote on it in our March meeting and then bring it to the, is that okay? All right, I make that motion. Is there a
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, could I add one thing?
Yes, sir.
Just as a practical matter in the interim, before this is cleared up, if any of you have, looking at the policy as it's written right now, if you'd like for me to send out an email just to say, hey, I got a call about X, and if you want to know what's going on, you know, if you
Yeah.
want to find out, call me.
That's good.
That's fine with me.
That'd be
If I got-
good, that's
great
fine.
idea.
Now, that will, I hope, that will solve the,
Right.
now, I'd prefer not to do that with the chair's situation, because the chair, you know, is the person who I'm supposed to be talking to, and I don't want to report every conversation I have with whoever the chair is, but I'm talking about
Well-
other board members.
Yep.
Until we actually change it, wouldn't that be a violation then?
No, you've already got it in here that, you know, if it's determined that legal advice, yeah.
Yeah.
That-
Yeah.
I see what you're saying, yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to
But I
stick
can't
policy.
police you guys, you understand that. When I get a phone call, I'm gonna answer your phone call unless I'm directly told by the chair not to, or you. That puts me in a ticklish situation, but it's not a ticklish situation for me to pipe up and say, hey, everybody, X called about this. That's a legitimate expectation from other board members to be privy to what the other person.
Right, that's
Is that-
already in there, that part's in there.
Right.
One question I get, Mr. Perry. Would that be you and I, or Mr. Krupke and I? Or who?
I'll speak with you.
Okay.
I do a lot more board work than he does so far.
Okay, we'll leave, all right?
But you're no different from any other public board. You know that from being
Right.
on another one. It's same, you get the same issues every week.
Oh, yeah.
Perry?
Recycle.
Just
Yeah,
in different forms.
So, as you know, over the weekend, I sent our next topic, which is 4320,
Okay.
a copy of that over to you, actually to Mr. Crompton, excuse me, could you have a look at this? So I guess I technically didn't go through the chair, so I guess I'm in violation, but
Well, I told the chair about it an hour ago.
Okay, so let's go ahead with that in mind. So again, just to make it official, we voted to keep policy 2610 in committee. We'll discuss it and bring it back to the March meeting to vote on. So we got that there. Next, we have the policies 4320, and we're going to combine the two of them, 5026 and 7250. We'll start with Mr. Perry. Mr. Perry?
yeah, I just thought, this came through as an NCSBA, some minor adjustments, but But the adjustments kind of really conflated the words tobacco product into a whole gamut of things that don't necessarily contain tobacco, which I thought was poor language and confusing. And I don't think substantively any of the changes that I'm proposing here changes anything that our policy, other than maybe explicitly, making sure that, somebody can use a nicotine patch or lozenges if they're trying to quit smoking, or, and then there was one on the 50/20, excuse me, let me make sure I got that. This is the student one. And on the 50/26, I put one thing in because on 50/26, number 1 at the bottom, I mean, if somebody's going through a security thing and they say empty your pockets, I don't think we should be considering that a display of product if they're forced to take it out. I don't want them violating policy simply because the security guard told them to empty their pockets. But other than those two things, everything else I believe in here is just par for the course. It's just using different language and differentiating between a nicotine product, a tobacco product, and a vaping product. So,
Thank you, sir. I'm going to look to my legal counsel because we also met and talked about it, so.
Right. I was going to say, and for the other two board members, we had a discussion about that the other day, and I think everybody, and from speaking with Ms. Mason earlier today, I think everybody's on the same page, and Dr. Barnes had mentioned this. We want to make sure that this policy, it's not just cigarettes that we're trying to stop with this. It's those, I think you used the example of Zen or one of those packets that...
Actually, Mr. Kromke did, yeah.
Right. Those
I hadn't
things,
heard about it.
Dr. Barnes pointed out to me that and my computer's moving slow now, but CBD and like Delta 8, Delta 9 products, those gummies and everything, they're already covered by our drug policy. Even the ones that are not considered controlled substances are already covered. It covers specifically THC containing and CBD containing products. So that was the issue. I thought the edits you had were good edits. One minor thing on the comment about a FDA-approved smoking cessation product, you may want to just add in that, as prescribed by a physician or something like that. I think you mentioned a concern that people will sometimes wear 3 of those patches or whatever, or patches that aren't theirs that they shouldn't be having. That's not the doctor's advice way of doing it. So,
And that does raise concern, like even with the nicotine gum. If I'm using it to get off smoking, that's fine. But if I'm using it to get a little euphoric thing going on, that's a different situation. So, again, I'm going to look over at our principals. What are your thoughts on this whole situation? Any thoughts at all? I know we have 2 elementary folks here, so I don't know that there's a lot. Hopefully not.
Yeah, I would disagree with that. It's not necessarily
Ms. Justice,
I'm total agreement. I'm listening to all of this.
would you like to make a motion, sir?
I'll motion to amend both 4320 and 5026, the section under definitions in nicotine products, which are the same in both. The last sentence of nicotine product, any doctor prescribed, FDA approved smoking cessation product that contains should not be considered a nicotine product. Adding the words doctor prescribed.
Doctor prescribed. And I almost have to think about that because what if, then we open the door. If we say doctor prescribed, what about if a PA describes it?
Medical
Physician.
medical
Yeah,
provider.
medical provider. I think
There you go.
that might be better.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. All right. So that's a motion. I will second that. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed. That carries 3-0, so that will be amended, the amended policy will be brought to the board for next, in March.
Point of order,
Yes, sir.
I think you have to vote on the whole thing. We just voted on my.
Oh, okay. All right, all right. You all right, sir? Let's vote on 4320, bringing 4320 amended and 5026/7250 to the full board. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, like sign. Passes 3-0. 7250, all right. Carrying on, we have our addition, which I gotta go back here because it didn't show up on my computer.
Yes, sir.
We have our addition at this point, which is 3620, Mr. Perry.
Excuse me.
Take your time.
Oh, we're already down at the end already?
Well, we have, the policies for second reading, but
Yeah,
we've added this as E, so.
I'm just trying to find my 3620. I know she included it.
Yeah, it should be right here. It should be the top.
Top,
Isn't it right there under your, right?
am I missing?
I think it's right there.
Okay, I got it.
Right here? Well, you don't have it. Here it is.
It's just hiding.
Yeah, it's hiding for you.
The reason I wanted to bring this up today is because my original intent has always been, because I'm a big advocate of protecting the free speech rights of our students, and I originally was contemplating that some amendments to our display policy in order to explicitly, protect student-initiated free speech. However, having some discussions with other board members, I concluded that there's a prerequisite problem that we need to deal with. Is if we were to open the floodgates for free speech for students, we would actually, as far as displays go, that would also include student groups. And so this is why I wanted to look at 3620, because we need to ensure that if we allow the free expression of our students, that is truly their free speech, and they're not simply parroting what somebody else is wanting them to say or coercing them to say. So, and then looking at 3620, one thing comes to mind, which is under Section B, additional rules for specific activities, and we have two sections, one for school clubs and organizations, which seem to be official ones, and then there's under 3, we have student-initiated, non-curriculum-related student groups at the secondary level. It seems from the school clubs that there is a sponsor, and that sponsor faculty member has a lot of sway, or at least not very many restrictions. And whereas on 3, when you have a student-initiated group, it's pretty well spelled out that this person is there to supervise only and not to lead or coerce, or that it is a student, truly student-led group. So I wonder why, I'm here to ask Dr. Barnes and others who can put some insight into it, why we have a different role, and, which kind of clubs do we have that are considered official clubs versus initiated, because I just want to make sure that this is, there's not too much influence on the students' free speech, and that it's truly their speech, and not somebody pursuing their political activism through our students.
Justice?
It's already in there. If you're talking about the student-initiated, non-curricular related student groups at the secondary level?
Right, but number 2 above it doesn't have the same kind of restrictions.
Pardon?
Number 2, student clubs and organizations, is different.
Oh, you're saying you'd like to have that added to the student clubs?
Well, I'm not sure, I want some explanation.
Okay.
I think part of the reason for number 3 is to make sure that we're clearly delineating the separation of church and state. So some clubs may be generated by student interest, but our staff can't necessarily lead those in the same way. So clubs that are sponsored by the school are things like your beta clubs or your student government, things like that. Non-student initiated, non-curriculum related clubs are your chess club or your LGBTQ club or your something where the kids are initiating it, but it's not sponsored by a staff member who can't sponsor things like this in the school building. Does that make sense?
I'm just wondering, because it seems like the definition of what a school club could be for is, if you look at under 2, that it's, I'm reading 2, number 5, establish aims which are educational or of the school or community interest. I mean, that could mean almost anything, the community interest.
I think the 3 is in there to not limit kids from having clubs of their own interest. I think that's what, I think 3 is supposed to open the door, it's not supposed to close it, if that makes sense.
I guess my question, if I'm hearing very correctly, is why don't we have the same, the second section of section 3 and section 2? Why would we have somebody that is going to lead, basically, in what scenario would you have an employee that is, in the beta club, that's kids all working together? Yes, there's a sponsor that, but they're not necessarily, bringing their own point of view on certain things to the thing. It's supposed to be for the betterment of all the students, but not, I guess. Am I correct? I don't mean to speak too much, please.
Yeah, it seems like there's restrictions on 3, like, school employees may not promote, lead, or participate in student-initiated meetings, but be present at meetings to maintain order and discipline, protect the well-being. But it doesn't say that of the sponsor for under-school clubs and organizations. It seems like they could just really lead it themselves.
Well, I mean, and just to piggyback on that, if I'm correct, and I'll go to Ms. Justice, I did see your hand up. But, say for instance, the SGA. I think SGA is wonderful. I think it's a great group. But, if I was in charge of the SGA at blah, blah, blah school, and I came in and said, well, if you're not a Republican or you're not a Democrat, you're horrible. That would be wrong. That would be bad. But there's nothing in Section 2, which would be under Section 2, that would preclude a person from doing it. Or is there?
Yeah, there's several other policies that mandate that work, 7,300 basically. I think 2 is sort of your, and it's been a while since I was a principal. Number 2 is sort of your school-sponsored specific clubs. 3 is to make sure that any kid with an interest can create a club. They still need to have an adult there for supervision purposes, but they're not there to run the ins and outs of it.
Ms. Justice?
Well, basically, I was just going to repeat what you were saying. Like a lot of clubs, like Beta Club, OSA clubs, and clubs like this, they already have their charters, and they have to follow those. So they already have that instruction in place, or that concept in place.
And specific sponsors and sponsor requirements for sponsors and things like that.
Sure.
If you'd like to know the difference, practically, the free speech difference between number 2 and number 3, on school-sponsored groups like that, the Spanish Club, the Beta Club, things like that, the agency, the school, the government is actually allowed to direct what, the content of their speech and what ideas they espouse. The group does, the official position of the group. On these other ones, number 3, the ones that fall in there, that'd be like Fellowship of Christian Athletes, for example, might be one there. The concern that you had pointed out about the separation of church and state concern, I think is probably the accurate way to say it, that you're trying to make clear that you are not compelling or coercing speech on those things that are not school-sponsored official school groups. So you're not going in and telling the Muslim students group, hey, you have to agree with X, or the Jewish students group that you have to agree with Y, or the Fellowship of Christian Athletes that, hey, this is a better theological viewpoint. So that's the difference between the two. The level of government control over number 2 is allowed to be much higher than it is over number 3. Over number 3, you have to be content neutral and just, if you're going to provide a forum for one group there, for the snake handling,
Well, but I think
evangelical
what
group, you have to allow the,
Let me give you a different example. Every few years, there's Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! There's a club playing game that kids
that's
do,
right.
Dungeons and Dragons, things like this. This just typifies that we can't say yes to one student group and no to another one. Here's the clear understanding of what we expect you to put forth, someone to monitor it, supervise it. But this opens the door and chalks the doors open to say any kid can make a club if he has a group, a sponsor, and a way to support it. So it just allows more flexibility for the kids to do things that interest them, that change over time.
Yeah, they do.
Mr. Perry?
Could you give us a list of the different school clubs, and if any of them have a viewpoint that they espouse when it comes to public opinion, things that could be not necessarily religious, but political or goal-wise?
Boy, I'd rather not, because that sort of says that,
No, I mean, as far as our
monitoring-
official clubs,
oh, you mean number 2?
yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought you meant number 3, I'm
No,
sorry.
no, no, no.
Yeah, I could,
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
but that's, I mean, it's, yeah, okay.
I mean, obviously, I don't have any problem with chess club.
Okay, yeah, apparently I have last year's.
Yeah. Ms. Farnham has last.
Well, you're handy. Can you send that to the board, please? Thank you. It's coming right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, let's, I guess, you have my concerns. I don't have, I'll look at those that you send me. I don't want to take up any more time on this, because we do have one more item. But after seeing what groups, what official groups, number 2, that we have, then perhaps we can table this discussion until, can I make a motion to table this discussion until next
You
month?
surely can. I'll second that. We'll pick it up next month?
You got a vote?
Yeah, oh, yeah, that's the next thing. Any other discussion on tabling? Hearing none, all in favor of tabling discussion on policy 3620 until our March meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Carries 3-0, so that will be held in committee. I'll write that on here, 3620. That's also for March. Okay, yes, that's done. All right, so our second to final bit of business is policy 6129, anti-choking device. Has any board member gotten any feedback, any emails, anything that we'd like to discuss? Yes, sir?
I don't have anything that I personally got, but I heard somebody say that perhaps our attorneys had some further viewpoints on it.
I think Brian, I was going to say, I think Brian had been tracking this one down, and, his view of it was he didn't see any real downside to the life back adoption.
Oh, good.
And after
Sir?
last Tuesday, when Brian was able to say that he feels like he's indemnified and protected our staff in it, we're all go, no
Right.
quit with one of the two.
Very good. So that will be up for the second reading in March. I will make that motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Can I make a,
Go ahead.
well, I guess it's more of a point of inquiry.
Go ahead.
I don't want to delay this too much, because we all recognized last month when we talked about this, every month we wait, could be a child that we're not saving. I'm assuming at the next meeting that the board could vote to bypass the second reading and go to third reading?
We don't have a third reading. There's a second reading, and then it will be put in.
Okay.
Yep. And so if we have a second reading and there may be speakers to speak to it, at our March meeting, but short of that, we will vote to bring it in as policy.
Great.
Right. Okay. That's all I have, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, do we need to vote on that?
Yeah, we do. Somebody got it?
Yep, second.
Okay, I entertain, so you can make the motion, please?
Oh, you're entertaining it.
Yeah.
I move that we adjourn.
Okay.
the Meeting of the policy.
We didn't vote on the, point of order?
Yes.
We didn't vote.
thought we did.
I had a question on the point of inquiry.
Oh, it's right, we had a first and second. Boy, I'm glad you're over there to keep me straight.
He's learning.
Yeah.
He's well.
So I made a motion, you seconded it to carry that on to second reading. All in favor, please signify by saying. Aye. Thank you, sir. Now, you made a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay. First and second to adjourn, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned.
Wait, we're done?
No, we're not done. We're gonna.
We're never-
You stay here, we'll all be leaving.
Carol?